He thought the rain-soaked street was empty, just another block on the way home. But the homeless woman wasn't looking at him. She was looking past him, up, at the rooftop glint of a sniper's scope, and when her hand clamped over the Navy SEAL's mouth, whispering, "Don't move. Don't cross that street," he realized she wasn't crazy. She was the only reason he wasn't already dead. Because that night, the hunter became the hunted, and a woman the world had forgotten saw the kill team before he did. Before we show you exactly what happened in that alley, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and hit that subscribe button, because this story starts in the shadows, and it doesn't stay there. Now, let's get into it. The street was the kind that wore its secrets under a coat of filth and rain. Neon signs flickered half-heartedly in smeared window panes. Trash bags slumped against rusted dumpsters. Above, a fire escape creaked in rhythm with the wind. Most people didn't walk this part of town unless they had no choice or nowhere else to go. Navy SEAL Logan Brandt walked with purpose. Civilian clothes, black hoodie, duffel slung over one shoulder. His boots hit the wet pavement with the silent confidence of someone used to slipping in and out of dangerous places. He had seen war, done things most would never speak of, but right now, he was simply walking home from the bus depot, alone, in the rain, somewhere between jet lag and survival instinct. That instinct flickered, dulled, not dead. He didn't notice the woman at first. Ruth Marin Ellis had been there the whole time. Long, matted hair clung to her face like seaweed on a drowning woman. Her coat was army green but rotted at the sleeves, clinging to her frame in layers of duct tape and grime. A second-hand grocery cart stood beside her, like a rusted chariot, stuffed with folded blankets, soup cans, and a doll missing its eyes. Her sneakers had holes, but her eyes didn't. They were sharp, watching everything. She sat under the scaffolding near the alley mouth, invisible the way street people become, the kind of person cars rolled past and pedestrians tried not to see. But her eyes never stopped moving, and tonight they landed on Logan. Something was wrong. She stood suddenly, her body jerking up like a broken marionette. The shopping cart rattled. A can rolled out and clattered against the sidewalk, but she didn't care. She moved like someone possessed, not drunk, not crazy, focused. Logan turned his head at the sound, one hand instinctively brushing against the sling of his bag. He didn't stop walking until she lunged. One filthy hand slammed across his mouth. The other gripped his hoodie collar. Logan staggered back on instinct, arm coiled to retaliate. But before he could react, she hissed in his ear, "Don't move! Don't say a word!" His body tensed. He could have dropped her in one move. She was small, lightweight, malnourished. But she wasn't mugging him. She wasn't even looking at him. Her eyes were locked over his shoulder, up, watching. "Don't cross that street," she whispered again. "They're watching you." Logan didn't move. Not because he was afraid of her, but because something in her voice hit deeper than fear. It was a certainty. He slowly turned his head, and then he saw it. A faint glint. Rooftop. About 5 stories up. Not lightning. Not a streetlight reflection. Glass. A lens. Then, movement. Fast. Subtle. Wrong. The parked van across the street, white with no markings, had a cable, snaking out of the side door and disappearing into the gutter. 2 shadows sat inside. One leaned forward, adjusting something. Metal glinted briefly. A scoped rifle. Ruth was already tugging him backwards into the alley, her fingers clenched tight around his jacket like claws. "Who the hell are you?" he muttered. She didn't answer, just pulled him deeper into the shadows. Logan followed. For the first time in years, he realized he was being hunted, and a homeless woman, Ruth Marin Ellis with nothing but rain in her eyes and street dust in her blood, had just saved his life. The alley swallowed them in damp darkness. Rainwater trickled down the brick walls in rivulets, and the stench of wet cardboard clung to every surface. Logan pulled free of Ruth's grip, chest heaving. His SEAL instinct screamed at him to retake control, to flip the dynamic, but he didn't make a move. Not yet. Ruth leaned against the wall, gasping like she'd sprinted a mile. Her coat hung from her frame like a battlefield flag. Her lips moved before sound came. "I've seen them," she muttered. "3 nights now. They don't belong." Logan narrowed his eyes. "You talking about the rooftop? The van?" She nodded, still catching her breath. "1 on the roof, 2 in the van, at least. They show up at night, park in the same spot, don't move, don't smoke, don't eat, just wait." "Could be security." "No." She looked up at him, rain streaking through the grime on her cheeks. "Security don't wear skull masks and point scopes at strangers. You were the first one they twitched for." Logan's blood ran cold. He pressed himself to the alley wall just enough to peek around the edge. He scanned the rooftop again. No movement. The glint was gone. But he'd seen it. Clear as day. And now that he knew what to look for, the whole street layout made more sense. Blind corners, parked vehicles, no line of sight from any storefront. And the van, fake plumbing decals barely visible in the rain, numbers smudged, license plate crooked. "Why me?" he asked aloud. Ruth coughed. "I don't know. But they're watching this street. Not the others, just this one." He turned back to her, lowering his voice. "What else did you see?" "I live behind the vents in the Dollarway building. 3rd floor's rotted. Nobody checks it. I see everything." She tapped the side of her temple. "They come around 10, leave before 3. Always the same van, but tonight..." She paused. "They got their gear out." That tightened something in Logan's gut. 3 nights of observation, no engagement. Until now. Tonight he showed up. Tonight they were ready. Ruth's fingers fidgeted with a torn leather cord around her neck. Her voice lowered. "You military?" Logan hesitated. "Doesn't matter," she answered for him. "They're hunting someone trained. You moved like one of them. Maybe that's why they're here." He ran a hand over his face, the weight of his duffel pressing heavier against his shoulder now. Inside was nothing but a few changes of clothes, his phone, and a roll of cash. He hadn't even carried his blade, just a habit from years of bouncing between missions. Who the hell had followed him back from overseas? He reached into his hoodie pocket, pulled out his phone. Powered off. Ruth's eyes darted to it. "Don't turn that on," she warned. He looked at her. "Why not?" "Because they're not just watching. They're listening." He slipped it back into his pocket. That's when Ruth stepped forward, looked up at him square. Her eyes weren't trembling now. They were fixed, cold, alert. "I don't know your story," she said, "and I don't care. But if you walk into that intersection again, they'll take you." Her voice cracked, just barely. "And you won't make it to the other side." Logan studied her. He'd been on 6 continents, operated behind enemy lines, outrun ambushes and airstrikes. He could spot fear from 100 yards. But Ruth's wasn't fear. It was memory. She'd seen this before. "Why are you helping me?" he asked finally. She didn't blink. "Because I know what it's like when no one believes you. And because I owe somebody." Then she turned, heading deeper into the alley. "If you want to live," she said over her shoulder, "keep close and don't look up." For the first time in a long time, Logan Brandt, elite Navy SEAL, followed a homeless woman through the dark, like a rookie in a combat zone. And something in him knew. This was the only way out. Ruth's pace was brisk for someone who looked like she hadn't eaten in 2 days. Logan followed without a word, cheers, ducking beneath a sagging clothesline strung between 2 crumbling buildings. The deeper they moved into the underbelly of the block, the more he felt the rhythm of a world most people never saw, the shadows between society's cracks. And Ruth moved through them like she belonged. They emerged in a fenced-off alley behind a pawn shop. From there, Ruth pointed up. "That's my nest," she whispered. "Come on." She led him up a crooked fire escape, steps groaning under their weight. At the 3rd floor landing, she dropped to her knees and wedged a metal rod into a rusted latch. The boarded door gave way with a reluctant creak. Inside, it was cold and damp, filled with the scent of mildew and old metal. Logan stepped into what had once been an office, maybe 12 feet square. A battered mattress sat on stacked milk crates. Blankets were wadded in a corner. A plastic crate served as a makeshift table, with scavenged binoculars, 2 cigarette lighters, and a half-used notepad. Lines and times were scratched across the pages in Ruth's jagged handwriting. She moved to the window, cracked and covered with grime, and gestured for him to look. From here, he had a perfect line of sight across the street. And there it was, the van, parked crooked along the curb, engine off, headlights dimmed. Logan reached for the binoculars. Ruth handed them to him silently. He adjusted the focus and felt a jolt. Inside the van, movement. 2 men, stationary, but alert. One of them leaned toward the dashboard, clicking something on a console. He wore a black fleece jacket, bulked slightly at the chest. Kevlar or tactical vest beneath, Logan figured. The other sat in the back, barely visible, but holding something long and metallic. Not a wrench, not a crowbar, a rifle. Logan's voice dropped to a whisper. "This isn't a robbery." "No," Ruth said. "They're professionals." "Yes." He lowered the binoculars. "How the hell did you spot this?" Ruth gave a thin smile. "You sleep near roofs and gutters long enough, you learn to read the sky." They started testing angles 3 nights ago. Lined up across from the public library first, then the diner, then today, here. "You wrote it all down?" She nodded to the notebook. He flipped through it. Shorthand notes, times, license plates. A page that simply read, "Van, returns nightly, 10:08 p.m. Logan stared at that page. "You've been watching them longer than just tonight." She hesitated, then nodded again. "How long?" Her voice was quiet. "Week, maybe more." He narrowed his eyes. "Then why didn't you say anything?" Ruth looked away, jaw tightening. "I did. I tried. Cop on 9th said I was off my meds. Lady at the shelter told me to focus on my recovery. Nobody listens to Ruth Marin. They think the hair and the clothes mean the brain's broken too." Her words stung sharper than he expected. He studied her. The matted hair pulled behind her ears, the threadbare jacket tied at the waist with twine, the boots held together with duct tape. But beneath the grime and hardship, her spine was straight, her hands were steady, and her eyes saw everything. "You were right," Logan said. "Too late to matter," she replied. He looked back out the window. One of the men had now exited the van. He stretched, looked casually down the street, then reached back in for something, a heavy black case. "You ever seen that before?" Logan asked. Ruth didn't answer. She didn't have to. Her eyes said it all. He turned toward the stairwell. "I need to move, find cover, intercept them." But Ruth's hand gripped his sleeve. "You go out there, they'll spot you. Your build, your walk, they'll know." He pulled his arm gently from her grasp. "I've handled worse." She took a step closer. "Have you handled betrayal?" That stopped him cold. "What?" Ruth looked back toward the van. "They're not random, not freelancers, not burglars." Her voice dropped low, like it hurt to say it. "They're hunting you," Ruth said, her voice like a fuse lit. "And someone you trust lit the match." The word betrayal landed in Logan's chest like a hammer. It didn't make sense. Yet it did. That was the worst part. He turned from the window, jaw tightening. "What do you mean, someone told them where to look?" Ruth didn't blink. "I mean, those men didn't pick this street, this block, or you by accident. Someone knows your face, your patterns, and they handed it over." He clenched his fists, breathing controlled but sharp. "You don't know that. I know the difference between surveillance and coincidence. I've lived in this alley longer than your government has known my name. And those guys, they're clocking your route, not mine." She crossed to the crate, lifting the notepad again. "Look, Tuesday, van parks facing west, follows movement from the cafe to the train platform. Wednesday, eastbound route shift. Every time you walk through here, they were closer." Logan scanned the scribbled notes. The details weren't perfect, but they were close enough to be dangerous. Too close. His voice was quieter now. There's only a handful of people who knew I'd be back in this city. Ruth raised an eyebrow. And how many of them are still breathing? Logan didn't answer. Outside, the second man stepped out of the van. Both now stood under a flickering street lamp. They weren't talking, just watching, waiting. Logan's mind raced. This wasn't some uncoordinated hit. This was structured, military precise. The longer he watched, the clearer it became. These weren't street criminals. They were trained. Possibly like him. Possibly former like him. He turned back to Ruth. You said they weren't here last week. Not until you showed up. He nodded slowly. You were right to stop me. Her lips curved into a half smirk. Figured you'd prefer not being shot before your coffee. Logan chuckled dryly despite the tension. Then his face hardened again. If they're targeting me, they won't wait forever. They'll move when they're sure I'm alone and exposed. You mean like right now? She said grimly. He stepped back from the window. I can't stay here. If they're tracking my path, this place might already be compromised. Ruth folded her arms. And go where? Into another alley with fewer fire escapes? This building's a fortress by comparison. He studied her again. This woman, homeless, worn out, and barely surviving, was now his only advantage. She'd spotted a threat his own instincts had missed. Why'd you help me? He asked, voice low. She shrugged, but didn't smile this time. Because I've seen people die for nothing. If I let them kill you, knowing what I saw, I'd be one of them. Logan didn't reply. His jaw flexed. The gratitude he felt was buried under layers of discipline and muscle memory, but it was real. He checked the rooftops again. Any sign of movement up high? She stepped to his side, squinting into the gloom. Still only two. Van guys. Rooftops are clean. For now. Logan nodded. Then we move first. Quietly. Fast. Ruth gave a short laugh. You just said not to move. That was when I thought you were crazy. She snorted. Still might be. He cracked a grin. At least you're my kind of crazy. Suddenly her face turned serious again. Wait. He froze. She raised a hand, but not to him, but toward the window. In the reflection of a windshield across the street, faint movement. A rooftop silhouette. A third figure, kneeling now, and aimed directly at the building. Ruth's eyes widened. They know you're in here! Logan didn't wait. He lunged toward her, grabbing her shoulder. Down! They hit the floor just as the glass shattered above them with a violent crack. The sniper round slicing through the wall. Dust exploded into the room. Bits of brick and insulation rained down. Logan covered Ruth with his body, teeth gritted. Ruth gasped. They're not waiting anymore. Logan's voice was ice. So no, now it's war. The air was thick with dust and adrenaline. Ruth coughed hard, her lungs catching plaster in panic. Logan stayed low, eyes scanning the shattered window, nostrils flaring as if trying to scent the next danger before it appeared. Another shot ripped through the air, punching a fist-sized hole in the wall behind them. Chunks of concrete ricocheted off the floor. The third sniper wasn't missing. He was probing. Logan spoke calmly, urgently. They're confirming I'm in here. Next, they'll flush us out or level the place. Ruth gritted her teeth. They'll kill anyone in the way, he nodded. Especially you. For a moment, neither moved. Their eyes locked. Then Logan pushed off the ground, crawling toward his duffel near the back of the room. Ruth watched as he ripped open a side pocket and retrieved something small and black. Not a weapon, but a compact radio unit. Backup? She asked, eyebrows raised. He shook his head. No time. This is just a signal jammer. Might screw with their comms for a few minutes if they're synced through short range. He powered it on. The static hum buzzed faintly in the air. They'll adjust, she said. I just need a window, Logan replied. Another bullet shattered a bottle on the windowsill, glass raining down. Okay, that's enough, Ruth muttered, grabbing a rusted pipe from beside her mattress. What's the plan? Because this place ain't got a back door. Logan grinned despite himself. Sure it does. You just have to break it open. He pointed upward. The ceiling above the far end of the room had water damage and cracks. A possible crawlspace hatch warped and hidden. I count 3 outside, Logan said. You can 1 sniper, 2 ground units. That's manageable. Ruth laughed. A single sharp bark of disbelief. Manageable? With what? A bent pipe and an attitude? He stepped toward the wall, planting one boot against a broken chair for height. That's more than I've had before. The hatch gave way with a loud crack as he forced it open, revealing a dusty shaft above. He turned back, offered his hand. She hesitated. You want to stay and play target? He asked. No, she snapped. Just hate tight spaces. He smirked. Then you're gonna love what comes next. She gripped his hand, letting him pull her up. Her fingers were strong, scarred, not the kind that ever expected rescue. As they disappeared into the darkness above, another shot slammed into the door frame, sending splinters in all directions. They moved fast, hunched through the narrow shaft. Ruth's breath echoed. Logan led them over the support beams and ancient wiring. Their footfalls, silent, deliberate. Then they stopped. He crouched near a ventilation duct, peeking through slats onto the alley below. The 2 ground men were repositioning, one circling the building's side, the other near the van. Snipers covering them, Logan whispered. If we drop now, we've got a 5-second gap. Tops. Ruth glanced down. That dumpster still has a lid. Might cushion a fall. He raised an eyebrow. You've done this before? She shrugged. Not the first time I've had to jump into garbage to stay alive. He grinned. Then you're a natural. Without another word, he kicked the vent free and dropped, landing squarely in the dumpster below with a heavy thud. Ruth followed an instant later, crashing beside him in a spray of cardboard and rotten lettuce. They bolted from the dumpster just as a voice behind them barked, There! No time to think. Logan grabbed Ruth's arm and sprinted, weaving through the alley's narrow passage as bullets pinged off brick behind them. They hurdled trash bags, ducked under low-hanging fire escapes. She gasped, Where are we going? To somewhere they don't expect, he replied between breaths. You know this city better than I do. Pick a way out. Ruth's eyes darted. Left, 2 blocks, sewer entrance behind the Thai place. Logan didn't hesitate. Lead the way. They vanished into the city's underbelly as the attackers gave chase. But now the hunted were hunting back. Ruth's boots hit the pavement hard, sending up splashes from oily puddles. Logan followed close behind, his breathing steady despite the chase. They rounded a corner, wind funneling between brick walls like the city itself was exhaling. The Thai restaurant loomed ahead, its kitchen vent rattling with the scent of burned oil and ginger. Behind the dumpsters, half concealed by shadows and overgrowth, sat the rusted door to the old utility tunnel system, locked by a chain Ruth had cut months ago to escape a different kind of danger. She yanked it open, metal groaning in protest. Go, she snapped. Logan didn't hesitate. He ducked into the dark, flashlight from his duffel flicking on, cutting a beam through years of neglect. Ruth followed, slamming the door behind them and re-securing the chain loosely from the inside. Anyone chasing would have to waste precious minutes getting through. They descended metal stairs slick with moss and grime, down into the artery beneath the city, a forgotten stretch of maintenance tunnel, once meant for fiber cables and storm runoff, now home to rats, trash, and secrets. Ruth led with confidence. Left tunnels flooded past the third fork, right tunnel loops around. There's an access grate near the old bridge works. Logan stared. How do you know all this? She glanced over her shoulder. Because I sleep down here when it gets too cold to breathe up there. He nodded, silently absorbing the implication. The tunnel air was thick, damp, reeking of rust and mildew. Water dripped somewhere ahead, echoing off the concrete walls in rhythmic intervals. Ruth's long, knotted hair stuck to her neck, sweat mingling with street grit. Logan moved like a ghost, efficient and quiet, light bouncing off his face and revealing fresh lines of tension that hadn't been there when the night began. Why are they after you? She asked, finally breaking the silence. He hesitated, then answered. I knew something I shouldn't have. I passed it on to the wrong person. That's vague and useless. He gave a dry chuckle. That's the safest kind of answer. She turned a corner, pointing. That grate up there? It's usually unlocked. They crouched near the metal frame. Logan tested it. Loose. He peered up through the bars, seeing dim moonlight above. "We're close to the bridge." "That's right, Midtown Bypass," Ruth said. "No cameras, lots of shadows." They climbed out slowly, emerging into a narrow maintenance lot behind a row of shuttered warehouses. The city buzzed in the distance, sirens faint, horns like lullabies of a world that had no clue what passed beneath its feet. Logan scanned the area. "I have to get to a safe contact. One person I trust." Ruth crossed her arms. "Where?" 20 blocks south, off Crescent Street." She raised an eyebrow. "You think you'll make it that far on foot with people hunting you?" He looked at her, expression unreadable. "I'll manage." "Then you're dumber than I thought." He tilted his head. "You offering to help?" "No," she muttered. "I'm offering to walk the first 10 blocks with you. The ones you'd get shot in without someone like me spotting it first." Logan didn't smile. He simply nodded. They moved again, cutting through alleys and fenced lots. Twice Ruth stopped him, pulling him back before they turned corners. Once she spotted a drone buzzing low, barely visible. They ducked under a tarp in a construction zone until it passed. "You're good at this," Logan said as they moved again. "I've been invisible a long time," she answered. "You learn things when the world forgets to look at you." They reached a bridge underpass and paused. Ruth leaned against the concrete wall, breathing hard. "I'm not going further," she said. Logan looked at her. "You saved me, twice." "I didn't do it for you." "Why then?" She exhaled. "Because no one looks out for us. People like me. I didn't want to watch another body hit the ground just because the world's blind." He reached into his duffel, pulled out a small, thin envelope. "It's not much, but it's something." She shook her head. "Keep it. You'll need it where you're going." He stared at her for a long moment, then offered his hand. "Thank you, Ruth Marin Ellis." Her eyes widened. "You remembered my name?" "Can't forget it." She nodded slowly, and then she was gone, disappearing into the shadows, the city swallowing her up like a myth. Logan adjusted his bag and started walking south, the darkness behind him feeling a little less cold. Logan's boots struck the pavement with calm precision. The rain had lightened to a mist, streetlights casting halos over Crescent Street's uneven sidewalks. His shoulders stayed square, posture casual, as if he were just another late commuter. But inside, his blood hummed. The instincts of a lifetime in combat, reawakened by every echo, every flicker in his periphery, was... His contact's safe house was only a few blocks away now. A retired analyst, someone who could discreetly upload the encrypted files he carried, evidence that could unravel a covert operation run far too close to home. But as he neared the intersection at Grayson Avenue, his steps faltered. Something felt wrong. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that settles just before a trigger pulls. He paused near a storefront window, using the reflection to scan the shadows behind him. A van, same model and color as the one Ruth had warned him about earlier. Parked, engine off, no lights. He pivoted and entered the alley beside the bodega. Stepping behind the dumpster, pulled out a compact mirror from his pocket and angled it behind him. There they were, 3 men, military bearing, civilian clothes, the kind of coordination you can't fake. Logan's jaw tightened. He ducked low, sprinted between the buildings. The moment he cleared the corner, the van roared to life. Tires screeched. Shouts cut the air. He ran. The world narrowed to muscle and breath and asphalt. Another block, then another, but they were closing in. These weren't thugs. They were trained, just like him. He ducked into a loading dock, grabbed a discarded pipe from the ground, his back against the concrete, chest heaving. Then, footsteps, fast. He waited until the shadow rounded the edge. Crack! The pipe hit clean, and the man crumpled. Logan rolled, disarmed him mid-fall, and ducked again. But now there were more. 2 others. One had a taser. The other, something far worse, a silenced pistol. This was no capture mission. They weren't here to question him. They were here to erase him. He dove between crates, shots whispering past his head. A ricochet sparked against metal. 1 step more, and then a voice cut the chaos. "Down!" A figure burst from behind a shipping bin, a blur of matted hair and swinging steel. Ruth. She struck the man with the taser first, a crowbar arcing with a sickening crack. He dropped. The second man spun, aiming. Logan was already there. He tackled him low, wrestling the gun from his grip and slamming his elbow into the man's temple. Silence returned. 3 bodies down, no witnesses, no sirens yet. Logan turned, breathing hard. "What the hell are you doing here?" Ruth tossed the crowbar aside. Her jacket was soaked, and her chest heaved with adrenaline. "I doubled back. Couldn't shake the feeling. Something told me—" She didn't finish. She didn't have to. He looked at her, saw the cut above her eye, the trembling in her hands. "You're insane," he said. She gave a half smile. "Takes one to know one." He pulled her into a brief hug, surprising them both. When they stepped apart, Logan wiped the blood from his sleeve. "I owe you my life. Again." "You're running out of lives," she said. He looked around. "Come with me." Ruth shook her head. "This is your war, soldier. I just helped you win tonight's battle." Logan looked like he wanted to argue, but didn't. He pulled out a slip of paper from his pocket. "If you ever need anything," he said, pressing it into her hand. "This is a name and a number. It'll open doors." She didn't look at it. "I only open my own doors," she muttered. But she kept the paper. Then she turned and vanished into the night again, as quietly as she'd arrived. Logan watched the spot where she disappeared for a moment longer before walking away, into the mist. The street swallowed them both, but something had changed. For him, the mission was back on. For her, the city would never look the same again. By morning, the rain had washed most of the blood from the alley. City workers passed by the loading dock, oblivious to what had transpired hours before. Trash bags lined the street, the kind of place people overlooked. Just like Ruth, but she was gone. Logan returned the next day, scanning the sidewalks, alleyways, stoops. No trace, no Ruth, not even the tattered blanket she'd once huddled under, just city steam curling from vents and the distant screech of a subway train rumbling underneath. He checked shelters, asked around with quiet tact, the kind that didn't raise flags. Nothing. To most of the city, Ruth never existed, a ghost among 1,000 others drifting beneath the radar. But she had left something behind. Inside his jacket pocket, Logan found the scrap of cardboard he didn't remember placing there, torn from the side of a cereal box, written in smudged black ink, "Tell them we see everything, even when they pretend we don't. Ruth Maren Ellis." He stood still for a long time, reading it again and again. A Navy SEAL, trained in 6 languages, dozens of weapons, the mechanics of silence and subterfuge. And here he was, learning something new from a woman the world had thrown away. He folded the cardboard and slipped it into his wallet. Back in Washington, things moved quickly. His contact had uploaded the data. The right people were rattled. A covert operation buried in redacted budgets was now burning under spotlights. But Logan's mind wasn't on it, not entirely. He kept thinking about Ruth. He tried one last time, found a street preacher who sometimes handed out soup under the overpass. "Ruth?" the preacher said, scratching his beard. "Long hair, sharp tongue, smelled like machine oil and firewood." Logan nodded. "Yeah, I saw her 2 nights ago. Said she was done with this part of town, said she needed cleaner shadows." "Did she say where?" The preacher grinned. "She said something about the rooftops." "Rooftops?" She said, "If they can watch us from above, I'll learn to do the same." Then she laughed. Scared me a little. Logan offered his thanks and walked away, more amused than worried. Somehow, it made perfect sense. Later that week, Logan stood on the roof of a federal building, waiting for a debrief. He stepped to the edge, scanning the city skyline, just out of habit. Then, for a split second, he thought he saw her. Far off, crouched on a rooftop ledge, a silhouette framed by a flickering billboard, long hair blowing in the wind, watching. But when he blinked, she was gone, or maybe she had never been there at all. He pulled the folded scrap of cardboard from his wallet and read her name again. Ruth Maren Ellis. He wouldn't forget it, because people like Ruth weren't ghosts. They were mirrors, showing the world what it didn't want to see. She had no medals, no rank, no pension, but she saved his life twice, and he suspected she'd done it for others before, and would again. Days turned into weeks, and the incident in the alley became little more than a redacted footnote in a classified report. The media never heard about it. No headlines, no ticker tape, but the ripple had already started. The rooftop team that tried to take Logan down, disavowed, quietly reassigned, disappeared, or hung out to dry. The agency denied knowledge. The van vanished from the impound overnight. But Logan knew. Someone in power had sent that kill team, and Ruth's intervention had cracked something wider open than either of them realized. Still, Ruth, she vanished in plain sight, the way only people like her could. No forwarding address, no ID, just a ghost among millions of others who kept the city's secrets without asking for credit. But in unexpected corners, her name started surfacing again. At a shelter near Battery Park, someone had spray-painted words in careful script on the back wall. "We see what they miss. REC. Nobody claimed it. Nobody painted over it either. In another corner of the city, a coat drive turned up dozens of pristine military jackets with Ruth's name scrawled inside. Not one donor remembered giving them. Volunteers whispered about a barefoot woman with sharp eyes and a muttered phrase, "Make sure they're warm. No questions." Some claimed she'd been spotted near the Queensboro Bridge. Others said she showed up only in rainstorms. Walking dogs no one could quite place. A legend began to form. Half truth, half myth, and all the more powerful for it. But Logan knew the truth. One night, he attended a classified hearing in a soundproof room under D.C. concrete. Senators in suits, intelligence officers with poker faces. They questioned his version of events, suggested trauma, disorientation, even accused him of hallucinating the rooftop gunman. He said nothing about Ruth at first. Then, after one official pushed too far, Logan leaned forward and said calmly, "I wasn't alone. Someone saved me before any of your teams even realized I was being hunted." "Who?" the senator asked. He pulled the cardboard scrap from his wallet, laid it flat on the table. The ink had smudged, but her message was still there. "Ruth Marin Ellis," he said. "Write it down, because one day you're going to owe her too." They didn't respond, but someone in that room glanced at the name and hesitated, just for a second. It was enough. Logan left that meeting with his conscience intact. He didn't talk about her again publicly, but whenever he passed someone hunched beneath scaffolding, or heard laughter drifting from the alleyways, he looked a little closer. One rainy afternoon, as he walked along Canal Street, a child selling fruit stopped him. "You Logan?" the girl asked, eyes bright beneath a plastic poncho. "Yeah." She handed him a brown envelope. Inside, a single photograph, grainy, taken from far away. Ruth crouched on a fire escape, watching two men argue in a dark alley, a gun visible in one jacket pocket. She wasn't running. She was waiting. On the back of the photo, "Not done yet. R." Logan smiled and slipped the photo into his jacket. He didn't need to find her anymore. He just needed to trust that somewhere, in the forgotten corners of the city, Ruth Marin was still watching, still saving lives, still invisible. And maybe that's what heroes look like, when no one's watching. Did Ruth do the right thing by stepping in? Or was it too dangerous to get involved? Should Logan have trusted her sooner? Or was his caution justified? Let me know what you think in the comments. I'm always curious to hear your take. If you enjoyed this story, go ahead and tap that like button. It really helps more than you think. Make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss the next one. I post new stories like this every single day. And hey, if you know someone who'd appreciate this one, send it their way. You should see a few of my other videos popping up on your screen now. Pick one, and I'll meet you over there. Same time tomorrow. I'll be back with another one.